Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is a donation reward from Matthew Vasquez, and yeah, this is finally out on streaming, so you can finally react to it. I wasn't able to see this in theaters, and then it ended up being donated for anyway, so just had to wait for it to come out. So I obviously saw the first one multiple times back in 2018, I want to say. And it's very good. In fact, it's one of Marvel's best movies, period. Um, I've seen it many, many times, and every time I do, it's just as good. Now, this is a sequel, and I know that the next movie is going to kind of act as like a second part to this, so I do know that this kind of ends on a cliffhanger. But I know very little about it other than having seen like a couple trailers and knowing just the gist of, Miguel O'Hara, who was shown in the post credits of the first movie. And just the gist of, all the different spider people and everything. I don't know, like, all the details about the exact plot, though, so. What I do know is that apparently the animators and people working on this movie were crunched, like, excessively hard and mistreated while working on this film and everything, and so along with the strikes and everything, it's honestly a good thing that the next movie has been delayed, because we need to stop with that entire practice of crunching and forcing animators and other people working on these movies and all to get these out as quick as possible. The entire instant gratification idea behind a lot of media and all has just led to some very toxic, horrible working practices that put huge, like, terrible strains on the people making these films. All for the sake of getting the movies out as quick as possible, no matter what the expense might be. It's really, really fucked up. But there's not really too much we can do about it except let our voices be heard and hope that strikes like what's going on right now work. So, yeah. Now let's see what happens in the future, and hopefully things end up becoming better. Now, as for this movie, I don't know exactly where this is going to go. Again, I just know the small details. I know it looks good from the little bit I've seen in the trailers and all. It's almost 2.5 hours long. Granted, some of that's probably credits, but still. That's a long runtime. So I'm hoping for a lot of great content here. I'm wondering if any of the spider people from the last movie are going to be in this. Because I don't know if they are or not. Like Spider-Ham or Spider-Man Noir or Penny. I don't know if any of them are going to be in this at all. Obviously, the only one I know returning, well, only ones I know returning, besides Miles, obviously, are Gwen and Peter B. Parker. Outside of them, I don't know if any of the others are. Outside of also Miguel, I don't know if there's any other villains in this, per se. But I do know some aspects of, like, some of the stuff the movie kind of, like, touches on in terms of overall messages and whatnot. I do know some things about that and like what the creators were going for in regards to that. I'm not going to get into that right now just because that might be considered a spoiler. Um, but I'll talk about that in the afterthoughts. I'm definitely interested to see where this goes and what we get. Excuse me. Because I've heard some people say that this is better than the first movie, and I've heard some people say that it's really good still, but just not as good as the first. Obviously, I'll form my own opinions on all of that, but I'm kind of curious where I'm going to end up resting on that. Because the first movie is probably my favorite superhero movie. Or at the very least, it's tied up there with No Way Home. Which, it's not entirely surprising my favorites are Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel hero. It's a little surprising that, considering I'm much more of a DC fangirl, that they beat out even a lot of DC movies. Because I strongly prefer DC. But I guess it's just going to be a we'll have to see how it goes basis, and these movies just based on the first one and then obviously No Way Home have just been fantastic. So hopefully this continues to follow in that, and hopefully it is, in my opinion, better than the first. Like, I would love to see that. That would be really interesting to see, especially because that would mean it's like there's a new height for superhero movies overall, in my opinion, but I don't know. Either way, I'm excited to find out. I'm excited to see this. I've been waiting for so long now and somehow have avoided spoilers. So let's just get this going and hope for the best. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then it fades back in. Everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. You know what's interesting about this basically being the first of a two-parter? I mean, you could maybe say like three-parter if you want to include the first one, but let's be honest. This was written as the first of a two-part. But the interesting thing is, I can't accurately judge this. I cannot accurately say whether I think this was better or worse than the first, because I feel it completely depends on what Beyond the Spider-Verse gives us. This entire movie was nothing but setup. In fact, it's hard to believe that, like, 2 hours, 15 minutes or so passed by in this movie. Because, one, like, it's just hard to believe it went by that quick. But also, nothing happened. Like, if you really think about it, like, this was all set up. Like, the meat of the story is going to come next time. This was all just getting it rolling. It's the weirdest feeling to watch this entire movie, again, almost 2 hours, 20 minutes, and it's all just basically equivalent to a first act. It's like you learn who the villains are, you are introduced to the plot, introduced to the main conflict, and then the movie's over. It's like this. Normally when you watch a movie or play a game or whatever else, you normally expect like a 3-act structure. It's more prominent in movies, I guess, than games. But you expect a 3-act structure. or at least something close to. This wasn't that. Again, this was basically just all one act. And for what it was, I mean, it's undeniably phenomenal. Like, the acting is phenomenal, the character work is phenomenal, the writing, the dialogue, the animation, no one's arguing that. But and I don't even know if anyone else would agree with me on this. This felt like the intro to the movie. And part of that is because it went by so fast. It's like it felt like it was over before it even started. But it's also because, like, this was written as a two-parter. The movie was originally going to be called, like, I think Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. And then Beyond the Spider-Verse was originally going to be Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, I believe. But they changed the names in a similar way that they did with the last two Avengers movies. Infinity War and Endgame. Endgame was originally supposed to be Infinity War Part 2. But they changed the name to Endgame to differentiate them a little more, instead of just going with a Part 1, Part 2 thing. Which, all in all, is a smart idea, and I don't mind that, either with those movies or with this one. But the difference is, with Infinity War, it felt like it was a movie. It didn't feel like a Part 1. It felt like it was a movie, or an Act 1. It felt like it was a movie, and then Endgame felt like it was a continuation, but still its own movie. This feels like it is literally just the first act of a film. I feel like I just got started, and I was expecting more. If I had not looked at the time that this movie took place, and you asked me how long this movie was, I would have told you 1 hour. I am not even kidding you. That is how fast it went by. I would have told you that I just watched 1 hour. But I'm looking at the time. It's 3 o'clock. I started this over 2 hours ago. I know that. I see the time on the player. It's over 2 hours ago. But I would have told you that we only watched an hour worth of movie. Because it only felt like a single act. It only felt like the start of the film. Again, just introducing us to the plot, the characters, the world, the conflict, all of that. Spot, let's be honest, didn't even do much in this film. Literally, all he did was get more powerful to get his revenge, but we didn't actually see him actually act on that yet. Like, going into this, I knew about Miguel, obviously, and I knew he was going to be a bad guy. The trailers make that very abundantly clear. I went into this expecting more than the chase. The chase scene that we got that was in the trailers and whatnot, I expected that to be early on in the film, and that there was going to be more confrontations and fights with him throughout. Instead, that's pretty much the meat of his screen time, is that chase. That's insanity. I also knew about some of the side characters, like, vaguely. I didn't know much of anything about them. Like, I knew about Pavitre, or Pavitia? I apologize very much for mispronouncing it. I believe they said Pavitre in the film. Prior to going in, I thought it was Paviter, because it sounds like Peter. But the way they were saying it was Pavitre. So I'm gonna go with that because that's what they said in the movie. I knew he existed, and that's pretty much it. Because I had seen, like, fan art of him. I knew Hobie existed. Again, that's about it, because I'd seen fan art of him. I knew Ben Reilly was in this because I heard about what's-his-face being cast as him. And then I knew what the trailers showed us and stuff. It's like, yeah. I didn't even remember everything from the trailers, to be fair. And I didn't even see all of the trailers. I think I might have only seen one of them. The point is, I had expectations going into this that were completely wrong because I expected this to feel more like a full film. While the second movie, while Beyond the Spider, or the third movie technically, Beyond the Spider Verse would continue off of it directly, but would also feel like kind of its own film in a way. Again, like Infinity War and Endgame. Not what we got at all. And by the way, I want to make it clear, I'm not complaining about this. I'm just surprised. This isn't a problem for me. I just was not expecting it. There was a lot I was not expecting in this, like Donald Glover, or getting to actually see like little shots from the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. Like I actually did not expect those to be shown in here, despite the premise of the film and the entire Spider-Verse thing. I did not even slightly expect to see either of them. I knew about the line about referencing Tom Holland's Spider-Man with, the Doctor Strange line and everything. I knew about that because that's in the trailer that I saw, but I didn't know we were going to actually see anything with any of the live action stuff. And I definitely was not expecting Donald Glover to play a live action Aaron Davis. That's fantastic, though. I love that. Yeah, there was a lot of surprises in this, and again, at the end when he was sent to the wrong world, that actually caught me by surprise because it's like it just kind of skipped my mind when they explained the machine earlier. I forgot exactly what it was called. It's like something like Go Home device or something like that. But they explained it earlier that it would scan you and send you to the dimension based on your powers and whatnot, based on your biological signature. But his powers are connected to this spider from the other universe that was brought there by Spot. So he was sent to the universe that the spider was from. I didn't even put that together. I genuinely did not put that together at first. But when I did, it was like such a duh moment. And it's like, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like, I feel bad that I didn't get that. Also, the idea that that Miles himself is an anomaly, that he's not meant to exist, and that he's basically the cause of all of this. That if he hadn't interfered, his Spider-Man, his Peter wouldn't have died, Spot wouldn't have happened, he would have never been bit by the spider and become Spider-Man. All of this is, and all of these other anomalies are supposedly because of him. And the victim blaming here is strong. So this is one thing I knew about, and I want to mention this here because I brought it up in the pre-thoughts. Lord and Miller and the people behind this movie have directly confirmed that Miguel's entire hatred of Miles and saying things like he shouldn't exist and that he's the problem and all is directly referencing and calling out the people who in real life constantly say shit like Miles Morales is not Spider-Man. The racist assholes out there who refuse to call Miles Spider-Man, instead just calling him Miles, and will not see anyone besides Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And without a doubt, fueled by racism. This was directly confirmed to be a call-out, that Miguel was directly inspired by and is calling out those people. This was confirmed. And It's very apparent. And you know what else is very apparent? That Gwen Stacy is trans. Yes, this I'm a trans woman. Listen, I am a trans woman. It's impossible for me to have not heard this argument that had gone around social media when this movie came out to theaters. There is this argument, there's this debate that people were having. Is Gwen trans or not? She has the Protect Trans Kids poster on her wall. Her father has like the trans colors on his uniform. Is Gwen trans? If you can watch this movie and specifically watch Gwen's character arc and story in this, especially when she reveals herself to her father, if you can watch that and not understand the clear trans allegory there, if you can watch that and not see her as trans, you have the biggest case of denial I have ever seen. It is so blatant, so in your face. It's just, it's even the fucking colors of her world. Like, we're so transcoded, it's not funny. Like, of course, nothing is directly stated, but it doesn't need to be. You have critical thinking skills, right? You can put two and two together. You can read context clues, I hope, because they are everywhere. It's like, if you don't see that, I don't know what to say. You must not have been paying attention. Or just, you must not have been watching the movie at all. Because if you were watching the movie, even like not paying the greatest attention, you still should have been able to see it. It was so in your face about it. Without actually directly stating it. Gwen Stacy is trans. And that's awesome. Like, her coming out to her father, like, come on. Do you know how directly I related to that scene? And unfortunately couldn't relate to the fact that he, decided to become better in the end and make up for his past mistakes, and now I'm getting really depressed that part was not realistic for me, unfortunately. Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, it's like, I don't know how you could see it any other way. Um, I like the new characters we got in this. Like, Miguel is a great villain. And again, like I said in the reaction, a great villain who doesn't think he's a villain. He truly believes he's doing the right thing for the best of humanity. All humanity. Every iteration of humanity throughout the multiverse. He's genuinely trying to save people. The problem is, he's so cold that he doesn't see how his response to things is bad. And I don't know if he's going to get redeemed in Beyond the Spider-Verse, but I could see it going either way. Hobie is easily the best of the new characters, though. If anyone thought it was going to be someone different for me, it's like, you clearly don't know me. If you know me, you very much could see that I was going to love Hobie. His anarchist attitude, the punk rock style, the fact that he's the first one to actually help Miles when even Gwen wouldn't do that at first. Even Gwen was turning against him. It's like, yeah, fucking course I love Hobie. Plus, it's Daniel Kaluuya, who's an amazing actor. Like his works in the Jordan Peele horror films is just absolute genius. It's like he did a great job doing the voice here. He was funny, he was charming, he was cool. He was just fantastic. And I loved Pavitra as well. He's super funny and adorbs. I love the little joke about here's the traffic, here's the traffic here. By the way, here's the traffic. It's like that was funny. Here's where the British stole all our stuff. Really funny. Probably the best bits of comedy in this movie because this was a very serious film. So there was comedy, but there wasn't a lot of it. The best comedy definitely came from that scene. The chai tea thing was funny too. I can't lie, I have obviously called it chai tea. Because here in America, at least, it's referring to a specific blend of tea. It's not just referring to tea. Like obviously, chai means tea, as Pavitra said. It's like saying tea. It's redundant. It's kind of funny too because at the beginning of the movie when Miles meets Spot and all, he kind of brings that up about saying machine at the end of ATM when the M means machine. It's kind of funny that that came into play with the chai thing later on. That's good. I like that. But yeah, when we use the word chai here, a lot of times in America, we're specifically talking about a certain blend. So we're not just talking about tea in general. Like we would not call like Earl Grey chai. We would not call green tea chai. But I understand that the word actually means tea, and you know, it was still a funny, really funny moment and everything. Um, I like Miles's entire character arc in this about like finding his own way and not letting people control him or tell him what to do. Um, that was really good, and I think just a fantastic way to take his character. It makes sense given what we had in the first movie and given what was going on prior to that in this one. Um, Obviously, Gwen had more of a character arc in this. I mean, in general, the other Spider people had a bigger role than in the first movie, where they were, let's be honest, side characters to Miles. Miles was the star of the first film, who everybody else, all the other characters, kind of revolved around in order to, build. They were building up Miles as a character. Whether Peter, who was acting at Peter B, I should say, who was acting as a mentor. You have the love interest with Gwen. You have new friends with the likes of Penny and Peter Porker and Spider Noir. It's like, but they're all there to serve the purpose of building up Miles as a character. The first movie was about him growing into his own and becoming Spider-Man. This movie allows these other characters to breathe a lot more, allows them to become more of their own actual characters, especially Gwen. But Miguel is a very in-depth character too. Pavitra and Hobie definitely felt like a lot of like the other characters in the first movie, but it's very clear that they're going to become even bigger in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Um, and even so, I feel like they were much more so than the other characters in the first one. They had more to them than that, even in this. Um, Peter B was expanded upon and everything. It's just like, yeah, you get a lot of that throughout the course of this film, where everybody feels like a more in-depth character. And there's like, I don't want to say almost like 40 minutes longer than the first movie. I think the movie was around an hour 40 minutes or so. So it's almost about 40 minutes longer, I think, for this film. So they had more time to flesh things out. And again, with this being basically just the first act of a film, um, it also being 2 hours 20 minutes long and being just basically a first act allowed a lot more time to be given to developing and characterizing all of them. So that at the end, when you see Gwen has put together her own team of people to help out Miles, every single choice there makes sense. Every single one feels earned. It feels like they are the right ones to be there to support and save Miles. Obviously, you have the friends from the first movie, but even the new ones from this one. Pavitra, Hobie, the one girl whose name I can't remember, but she's there too. It's like, yeah, everyone there makes sense. Um, and it was just really, really good. It was really entertaining. It kept my attention. There was never a part that felt too slow or too weak or anything. It always felt like it was going strong throughout the entirety of the film. Like it was really just nailing it. You got some other like side characters shown at various points, like you had Vulture and whatnot. Um, and I think that's pretty darn good to showcase some of these others as well. The first 20 minutes of this was just Gwen's backstory, and it was just the cold open. We didn't even get the title screen until after that. And then you have like Miles just being Miles and interacting with his family and showing how he's kind of distancing himself a little bit from them. Gwen doesn't even come in to meet him until like the 45-minute mark. So you have another 25 minutes of just, like getting started. Like very bare, like starts to all of this. That's 45 minutes out of 2 hours 20. That's basically the equivalent of a cold open, even if only half of that was actually the cold open. And then things actually get started, and it just keeps getting started this entire time. And it's wild. It's surprising. Like even with the ending part with the reveal of this other world's Miles, it feels like this would be the big moment that would start off or well end off act 1 and kick off into act 2. I was expecting more, but that was the end of the film. And I really like that. I want to see here. Let me just check here, make sure on something. I want to see everyone who was there at the end. I want to see everyone who was there with Gwen. So we see Peter B, we see Pavitra, we see Hobie, we see the girl who, again, I can't remember her name, but the one who's basically an avatar, she said. There's Peter Porker, we have Penny, we have Spider Noir, and that seems to be it. But that's still a good set because, again, all of them were built up. Every single one of them. So yeah, that's really, really interesting and really well handled. It just makes sense. It's great. It's a fantastic movie, but again, I can't really judge it fully. I can't really say like my full thoughts on it until I see where it goes. Because in order for the setup to work, the payoff needs to work. You know what I mean? The setup requires the payoff. They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So for this, the setup is only as good as what the payoff delivers on. So once we see the payoff, it will tell us how good the setup was for it. It'll tell us, oh, this set things up excellently, and it will come into fruition as to how I thought about it, what I thought about the setup in that regard at that moment. It'd be like, it's the same thing if I watch the payoff before the setup. It's like you're seeing the payoff, but you have nothing to build up to that. So it's like, what is this paying off to? You can't watch one without the other. They need each other. Again, they go hand in hand. They are two parts of the same whole. And because this episode was just pure setup, I need to know what's going to happen in the payoff before I can say where I would rank this comparatively. So tentatively, I'm gonna put it basically on the same level as the first movie. If the payoff is good enough, basically, if the payoff is as good as what this setup basically promises or better, then it's gonna be above the first movie. But it completely depends for me on how Beyond the Spider-Verse goes before I can accurately judge it. That's just how I'm viewing this. Because I don't genuinely think this movie can be judged on its own, considering, like, from a story perspective, it's, again, Act 1. But yeah, I really, really did enjoy it nonetheless. I'm not saying, like, I can't say that I liked it. I loved it. I can say that. It's just, I can't figure out where to place it in terms of rankings, especially compared to the first one. Though, I can probably compare it to, like, other superhero movies. And in that regard, I would still place it right around the same area, no matter what, as the first movie. It's just exact position I can't say yet. But in terms of, like, general area, yeah, it's right around the same place as this, and I guess technically as well, No Way Home. Because those are my two favorite superhero movies. This would definitely be right around that same position. So, that all being said, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this film? Let me know your thoughts on the film and how it sets everything up for the next one. And I'm just hoping that the writers, the animators, everyone gets paid properly and gets, treated properly for when the next movie continues to be made following these strikes. Everyone who works on these movies deserves proper pay and respect and deserves to be treated equally in terms of all that. When the next movie comes out, I cannot promise I'm going to react to it, because that's going to be like a couple years. I can't promise anything at this point. Like, I think at the earliest at this point, it would come out late 2024. So if it is next year, if it does end up being next year, which I kind of hope it isn't. I kind of hope it's not until 2025. But if it does happen to be next year, I still can't promise, because I might end up seeing this in theaters. I might end up, I don't know. I just don't know at the moment. It's too early to say. But either way, thank you to Matthew Vasquez for donating for this. I obviously, again, still can say I very much love the film. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.